Welcome to Unwrap Reality, where we narrate stories on things that happen in real life.
You never think it'll happen to you, that someone you love could turn into a stranger overnight. But that's exactly what happened to me. One moment, I was living the dream, a cozy house in the suburbs, a man who promised forever, and a life so picture-perfect it felt like something out of a magazine. I thought we were unstoppable, two people destined to grow old together, sharing laughter over coffee and building memories that would last a lifetime. The next, my world imploded because of three little words. He got her pregnant. Those words didn't just break my heart. They shattered everything I believed about trust, loyalty, and love itself. It's funny how quickly your entire reality can shift when you least expect it, leaving you questioning not only the person you married, but also yourself. It started with a text message, a message meant for him, but sent to me by mistake. We need to tell her before it gets worse. Tell me what? Who is her? And why did those 6 words hit me harder than anything ever had before? That's how quickly my life unraveled, all because of one careless comment I didn't even mean. At first, I tried to convince myself it was nothing, just a misunderstanding or some kind of cruel joke. But deep down, I knew better. Something inside me whispered that this wasn't going to end well, and as much as I wanted to ignore it, curiosity turned into suspicion, then anger, and finally despair. What followed was a journey through betrayal, self-discovery, and questions I wasn't ready to answer. Questions like, how do you pick up the pieces when the foundation of your life has been torn apart? Let me take you back to the beginning, before everything fell apart. My name is Stacy, and up until recently, I thought I had it all figured out. I'm a planner by nature, the kind of person who color codes her calendar and has a 5-year plan pinned to the fridge. At 31, I was thriving in my career as a graphic designer, working from home most days, which gave me the flexibility to keep our lives running smoothly. Our house wasn't extravagant, but it was ours, a modest 2-bedroom with a backyard just big enough for weekend barbecues and lazy afternoons under the sun. Life felt predictable, safe, and comfortable, or at least that's what I told myself. Then there's Michael, my husband, or should I say, ex-husband. He's everything I'm not, spontaneous, adventurous, always chasing the next big thing. When we first met 7 years ago, his energy was intoxicating. He made me laugh, pushed me out of my comfort zone, and showed me how to embrace life without overthinking every detail. To the outside world, we were the perfect couple, balanced, complementary, unstoppable. But looking back now, I can see the cracks forming long before either of us acknowledged them. His restlessness became more pronounced over time. He'd come home late from work more often than not, claiming traffic or meetings, while I stayed behind, keeping the home fires burning. I chalked it up to stress or ambition, telling myself he was just trying to provide for us. But the signs were there if I'd been brave enough to face them, like the way he stopped holding my hand in public or how our conversations dwindled to surface-level chatter about groceries and bills. Or the fact that his gym bag always seemed packed these days, even on weekends when he swore he was working out. Looking back, those small details screamed louder than any argument ever could. And yet, I chose to ignore them, convincing myself that every relationship has its rough patches. Little did I know, this patch would turn into a chasm neither of us could cross. At first, the changes in Michael were subtle, easy to dismiss as quirks or temporary phases. He started coming home later and later, claiming client dinners or networking events. I'd ask questions, but his answers always seemed rehearsed, like he was reading lines from a script. "You worry too much," he'd say with a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. And maybe he was right, at least for a while. Maybe I was overthinking things. After all, we'd been together for 7 years. Surely, if something was truly wrong, I'd know it, right? But doubt has a way of creeping in when you least expect it, planting seeds of suspicion that grow faster than you can pull them out. The first real red flag came one Saturday morning when I decided to surprise him by joining him at the gym. I knew his routine well enough to time my arrival perfectly, or so I thought. When I walked into the lobby, scanning the room for his familiar face, the receptionist glanced up and said, "Oh, Michael already left." About an hour ago. An hour ago? My stomach dropped as I forced a polite thank you and turned to leave. On the drive home, my mind raced with possibilities, none of them good. Was he lying about where he really went? And if so, why go through the trouble of pretending? That question haunted me for days, gnawing at the edges of every interaction we had. As the weeks passed, more inconsistencies began to pile up. There were unexplained charges on our joint credit card, small amounts at first, then larger ones I couldn't account for. A hotel near downtown charged twice last month. Why would Michael book a hotel when we have a perfectly fine bed at home? Then there was the cologne, a new scent I didn't recognize lingering on his clothes after one of his late nights. Alone in bed, staring at the ceiling, I replayed conversations, moments, excuses, searching for meaning behind the patterns. Every unanswered question felt like another brick added to the wall between us until I realized I barely recognized the man sleeping beside me anymore. The breaking point came on a quiet Tuesday night, the kind where nothing seems out of the ordinary until everything changes forever. Michael was in the shower, humming some tune I didn't recognize, and I sat on the edge of our bed scrolling through his phone, something I'd never done before. Call it intuition or desperation, but something compelled me to look closer. And then I saw it, a string of messages from someone named Lila. My blood ran cold as I read exchanges that started innocently enough, "Hey, how's your day going?" but quickly escalated into something far more intimate. The final message stopped my heart. "I'm scared, Michael. What are we going to do about the baby?" I don't remember standing up, but suddenly I was pacing the room, clutching the phone like it might burn me. Betrayal doesn't come neatly wrapped in logic. It hits you raw and unfiltered, leaving no room for denial. I wanted to scream, to throw the phone against the wall, to demand answers right then and there, but instead I froze. When Michael stepped out of the bathroom, towel around his waist, he froze too, his eyes locking onto the phone in my trembling hands. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then he sighed, running a hand through his damp hair, and said, "Stacy, let me explain." Explain what? How long this had been going on? Whether he ever loved me at all. That night, we fought, not with yelling or tears, but with icy silence punctuated by accusations and half-truths. He admitted to the affair, claiming it just happened during a weak moment after a stressful project at work. But when pressed, he revealed the affair had been going on for nearly 8 months of lies, deceit, and stolen moments while I naively believed we were working toward a future together. As he spoke, I felt pieces of myself crumbling, my trust, my identity, my sense of security. Who was I married to? And who was I without him? The days that followed were a blur of anger, disbelief, and gut-wrenching clarity. I couldn't look at Michael without seeing the weight of his betrayal in every glance, every word, every breath he took. Friends urged me to kick him out immediately, but I wasn't ready, not yet. Instead, I found myself retreating inward, dissecting our relationship like a scientist trying to understand how something so seemingly solid could shatter so completely. I avoided looking at him directly, afraid I'd see the same man I fell in love with and lose my resolve. Nights became endless cycles of insomnia, scrolling through old photos and texts, searching for clues I must have missed along the way. One afternoon, while packing up some of his things to make space, emotionally and physically, I stumbled upon a hidden journal tucked inside a box of old receipts. The handwriting was unmistakably his, and the entries dated back months before the affair even began. Page after page revealed a man struggling with dissatisfaction, guilt, and regret. "I feel trapped," one entry read. "Stacy deserves better than this version of me." Another confessed, "I don't know who I am anymore." Reading those words felt like being punched in the gut. Here was proof that Michael had been unhappy long before Lila entered the picture, but did that excuse what he'd done? Did it absolve him of the pain he'd caused me? In the midst of my unraveling, I started noticing patterns in myself too. Had I become so focused on maintaining control, our schedules, finances, routines, that I'd neglected to nurture the emotional connection we once shared? Was I complicit in creating the distance that drove him into someone else's arms? These questions weren't meant to justify his actions, but they forced me to confront uncomfortable truths about myself. For the first time in years, I allowed myself to grieve, not just for the loss of my marriage, but for the person I used to be before bitterness and insecurity crept in. Just when I thought the pain couldn't get any worse, karma delivered its own brand of justice, and it came swiftly. A few weeks after I discovered the affair, Michael's double life exploded into public view. The other woman, Lila, leaked private messages and photos online, exposing their relationship to his colleagues, friends, and even his family. Overnight, Michael went from being a respected professional to a laughingstock. His boss called him into an emergency meeting, and by the end of the week, he was out of a job. The same charm and charisma that once made him magnetic now worked against him, painting him as reckless and irresponsible. Watching his downfall unfold felt surreal. Part of me wanted to revel in his misfortune, to scream, "Serves you right," at the top of my lungs, but another part of me felt hollow. This wasn't the revenge I imagined. It didn't bring closure or satisfaction. Instead, it left me wondering if anyone truly wins in situations like this. Michael moved back in with his parents, juggling visits to Lila and their newborn while trying to rebuild his shattered reputation. Meanwhile, I stayed in our house, surrounded by memories that now felt tainted. One evening, scrolling through social media, I saw a photo of him holding his baby, a tiny, innocent child caught in the wreckage of adult decisions. For the first time, I felt a flicker of pity for him. Not because he deserved forgiveness, but because I realized how much he'd lost, not just me, but himself. But as quickly as that moment of compassion arose, it vanished when I overheard snippets of conversations between mutual acquaintances. They whispered about how I must have driven him to cheat, questioning whether I'd been too controlling or distant. Public judgment stung more than I expected, forcing me to confront not only Michael's betrayal, but also society's tendency to assign blame where it doesn't belong. It dawned on me then, maybe this wasn't just about him or us, it was about the expectations placed on relationships, the pressure to appear perfect even when everything is falling apart. That realization hardened my resolve. If people wanted to judge me, fine. But I refused to let their opinions define my worth or my future. Months later, sitting in my newly redecorated living room, I find myself marveling at how far I've come. The house feels different now, lighter, brighter, like it's finally breathing again after years of suffocating under layers of pretense. Gone are the framed photos of Michael and me, replaced by art pieces I picked out myself and plants that remind me life can grow even in the cracks. Coffee steams in my favorite mug as I flip through old photo albums, not with bitterness, but with a strange sense of gratitude. Gratitude for the lessons learned, however painful they were to endure. What struck me most during this journey wasn't just the betrayal itself, it was the way it forced me to confront who I am and what I truly want. Losing Michael didn't just break me, it rebuilt me, piece by fragile piece, into someone stronger and more self-aware. I realized I had spent so much time trying to mold our lives into something perfect that I forgot to enjoy the messy, imperfect beauty of being human. Now, I wake up each morning excited to rediscover parts of myself I'd buried beneath routines and responsibilities. Some days are harder than others, but there's a quiet peace in knowing I'm no longer tethered to someone else's chaos. So here I am, starting over, not because I have to, but because I choose to. Love can heal wounds, yes, but it can also expose vulnerabilities we never knew existed. And maybe that's the point, to grow, to evolve, to become whole on our own terms. If you're watching this and feeling weighed down by your own struggles, know this, you're not alone. Betrayal leaves scars, but those scars tell stories of survival, resilience, and hope. Have you ever faced a moment that changed everything? Let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear your story.